What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about how to make your vocals really shine and pop within any mix that you are trying to achieve. We're going to be using the digital audio workstation called Ableton Live, and I'm going to walk you through 6 different steps as to how you could really polish some vocals right in the comfort of your own studio. Let's get started. Be sure to check out adorama.com to get the best deals. Whether it's recording video and audio at home, setting up your live stream, or getting some music gear, Adorama has it all. Now, you can track with any vocal microphone, but it's really up to you and your preference as to what you want to highlight about your voice. This microphone in particular highlights a lot of the warmth in my voice, which is what I really like to capture in genres like R&B, soul, etc. You're also going to need a pair of headphones to be able to hear yourself. I usually use my orange amp headphones. Right now I have my Focusrite all plugged up, but I have the 2i2 Scarlett USB interface. So when you pull up Ableton Live, it's going to show you the session view, but you want to be in arrangement view. You could toggle by hitting the tab button, or there are these lines over here that you could click on to toggle back and forth from arrangement to session. Let's track something real quick through the vocals, which will be a raw waveform that we're going to manipulate throughout this session. So before we record anything, we have to arm the track by hitting this record button on the track itself. And as you can see, the gray bouncy lines are telling me that I am able to record. Okay, so I want to hear myself, so I'm just gonna go from off to in. Press F9 to record. How can I be so foolish to think that you would stick around? Alright, I hit the spacebar to stop recording. I'm going to turn off the monitoring here so that you're not hearing double of me. Now let's go ahead and manipulate this vocal take. So you're going to want to click on the vocal, double click the top of that waveform, and it should bring down this workspace down below so that you can see a little bit better what you're working with here. So the first thing I want to talk about is the de-esser. Now, it depends on what kind of microphone you have. My microphone has a lot of really deep, rich, low end. Or you might be working with a microphone that's really highlighting all the top end of your vocals. So, like I said, this is kind of your call. Okay, so heading over to the left side of your screen, there's going to be a menu with categories. You're going to want to choose audio effects. Under dynamics, there's going to be a compressor. Under compressor, there is a plugin called de-esser. And that essentially takes all the really harsh like noises and the ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. And that basically takes all those high frequency waveforms and just like calms them down a little bit. So you double click the de-esser to bring this down to your workstation here. And if you hit the spacebar or play button, you'll notice that it'll play your vocals out. How can I be so foolish to think that you would stick around? So it's really calming down those S's there. So we're just going to leave that as is, but you could always play around with the attack release ratio depending on how many syllables or consonants or whatever harsh tones that you're really trying to parse out of your vocals. Okay, so let's talk about EQ. The EQ is going to overall take the entire waveform and take away all the things on that waveform that you don't want to hear in your mix. For instance, I will show you that we will be able to take out most of the low end from 100 hertz and below. And that's really just like that boomy sound. Like the really boomy sound that you don't want mudding up your track, especially if you're going to add bass later on. You don't want anything stepping in that zone or frequency, so using something like an EQ is really just gonna get rid of that and solve that problem right away. So you're gonna head over back to that menu, audio effects, EQ and filters. I like to use the EQ8. So double click on the EQ8 and that'll bring it down into your workspace. And again, playing my vocals back. How can I be so foolish? So there is a lot of low end. I'm gonna take this first notch right here, the filter 1, and I'm gonna go ahead and high pass that, which I could slide back and forth by dragging my mouse if I'd like, or I could really drag it anywhere on the EQ band. Really, it's hard to tell you exactly where you need to place this dip right here because I don't sing like you don't sing like me, our vocals are completely different. So really it's just a matter of like listening to something that you tracked and figuring out where you want to take out that low end. In this case, we could visualize it by watching where the track is predominantly booming. How can I be so foolish? So as you notice, right around at 100 hertz, all the sounds below that, the boominess is getting cut out. So this is allowing only the frequencies that I want to hear to pass through. Okay, so next up we're going to talk about the compressor, which is also under audio effects, under dynamics. You're going to click that down, and it's going to be the first thing that you see. So let's go ahead and hit compressor. Now, if you guys notice, my workspace here is getting a little cramped. I'm going to go ahead and double click these just to collapse them. Don't worry, they are still here. You could always open them back up if you choose to do so, but if you're feeling a little verklempt like me, you want to go ahead and clear your workspace. What is a compressor? So compression is really important because you don't really sing at the same volume or velocity. As you can see looking at this waveform, there's plenty of ups and downs. So what a compressor does is it takes those loudest peaks and it reduces the loudest parts so that we could create a more streamlined version of what you're singing. So basically it's taking those giant waveforms and squishing them down so that they're not significantly louder than your quietest parts of what you're singing. Okay, so there's a few things that you need to understand about compression. There's the ratio, there's the attack, and there's the release. And a lot of your professional vocalists in the studio don't really have to worry about mixing their stuff like this. And especially because they're using outboard gear like an 𝔸𝔻𝕆𝔝, which is an actual physical compressor that exists in a bigger studio. I'm going to show you guys how the compressor is working to push and pull the peaks and troughs of your track here. How can I be so foolish to think that you would stick around? So we want to lower the threshold just enough so we could see a little bit of gain reduction. How can I be so foolish? So this orange line up here is your gain reduction. And notice how every time there's a loud part, that gain reduction dips down a little bit further so you could actually see the gain reduction happening in real time as you play your track. Okay, so the settings, going back to the 𝔸𝔻𝕆𝔝 thing, if you want to emulate that outboard gear, it's really easy to just type in here. You just double click on this ratio. It's already set to 4:1, or you could toggle this up to 4.1. But I just think it's easier to just type it in down here. Now the attack, I usually set up to as fast as it can go. And in this case, it's 1 second. And then the release is gonna be around 60 milliseconds. So I'm just gonna go ahead and type that in. Okay, so after the compressor, I usually add a saturator to add in some character of grit, punch, or warmth. Okay, so let's go ahead and find that under categories again. Audio effects, drive and color is where you're gonna find saturation, and you're going to double click saturator. It brings it down to your audio effects area. Now again, this is personal preference. For me, I sing soul music, so the level of saturation is that of like an Amy Winehouse song or an Adele song. You hear a little bit of the growl of the microphone. I don't want it to be so aggressive in terms of saturation to the point where it sounds like I'm singing a punk song. How can I be so foolish? So yeah, we don't want it to sound like that. So I'm just gonna type in, I don't know, +5 dB and see how that sounds. How can I be so foolish Let's do like 10. To think that you would stick around? Okay, so with and without the saturator, let's check. How can I be so foolish to think that you would stick around? Yeah, so we're adding a little bit more punch, more grit, more warmth. Okay, so the next two things I'm going to be talking about is, again, completely up to the preference of whatever you're mixing to. The next audio effects I'm going to be talking to you guys about is really genre specific, and it's really user specific. Sometimes you want to sound like you're singing in a bathroom, but sometimes you want to sound like you are singing in a tiny room with very little reverb. Let's go back to audio effects. You're going to drop down reverb and resonance. And we're just going to double click on reverb. I'm going to go ahead and collapse my saturator and my compressor just so we could see the verb. And generally, I want to hear my reverb on the shiny end of things and not the low end of things. So we're going to go ahead and hit low cut. Let's listen back. How can I be so foolish? All right, so that is a dramatic amount of reverb. I don't want all of that, so I'm going to go ahead and take down the dry wet to, let's say, 20. See how that be so foolish. Okay, Okay, so I'm gonna take the decay time and just toggle it up maybe at 1 second-ish.
Be so foolish.
So I can kind of hear it at the end of my phrases, which is really nice. Okay. Delay is the last thing I want to talk about, and that is under delay and loop. You want to just double click delay. And delay is one of those things where, depending on how moody you want it to be, you might want less or more of it.
Be so foolish.
That sounds like I'm literally in a cave. I don't want that. So I'm going to turn down the dry wet, which tells me how much in the mix I am adding this delay to. I'm also going to highlight ping pong because that's one of my favorite delays.
Be so foolish.
Let's turn the feedback down so that it's not continuing to just be like, you know, repeating itself. Generally, if there's a lot of music going on and a lot of noise that's happening, you probably want less delay because sometimes delay kind of bleeds into other notes that might be pretty harsh or dissonant to the track. So yeah, like I said, you just want to play around with the delay and see what happens, but I barely touched the track with delay just to show you how it accentuates the vocal line. So yeah, that's basically my vocal chain. So as you can see, playing around with different kinds of vocal effects can enhance your vocal line, and there's just an infinite amount of ways you could really manipulate your vocals. A lot of it, honestly, is just playing around with these settings and seeing what sounds the best to your ear. So pro tip, if you don't know where to go with your vocal sound, you could always reference music. So take your favorite tracks, your favorite artists, try and listen to the kind of delay, the reverb, the compression that's happening in their songs. That's it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this tutorial was very helpful to you. And if you have any other suggestions as to what you want me to tackle in the future, please leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until then, my name's Raquel Lily. See you guys later.